Hello guys, Sujara speaking. Welcome to LJPCBM episode number 930, and today we're reacting to episode 9 of Finding DW, the last voice of DW. Now before I begin this countdown, or after this countdown is over with, I'm gonna eat my vanilla dish. So let's begin this. Begin in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Hi, I'm Jason Schwimmer, and this is a podcast about my journey to meet 7 male strangers who all have one thing in common with me. We all played the voice of DW, the little sister character on the popular kids show, Arthur.
Wow.
Who are they from? Arthur's real parents?
That's me, in an episode called Dear Adil, an episode where Arthur decides to start writing to a Turkish pen pal named Adil. The episode aired in September 2003. Last week,
Wow.
I spoke with Marissa Miller, an author, reporter, and journalist. I also spoke with Alex Cabrera Aragon, a writer and performer who happens to be a huge fan of DW. That episode was all about exploring imposter syndrome. I
Wow.
want to address some of the feedback I've seen where people have been a little surprised and even upset that DW, a female role model, was played exclusively by male voice actors. Marissa and Alex taught me a lot about what DW means to women, and I hope I can continue learning about the gender dynamics at play in my quest to find and interview the 7 other actors who played DW to understand more about how playing DW changed me. For those of you keeping score at home, you may have noticed that I found, interviewed, and featured each of the voice actors who played DW in order, except one, the 6th person to play the part, Andrew Dayton. The reason for that is that he was just extremely hard to track down. There isn't a whole lot out there about him. To make matters worse, he's sometimes credited with a suspicious middle name, Andrew Peter Dayton, while other times he just isn't. I had sort of given up hope of ever finding him. I was prepared to tell you that, hey, Andrew Dayton is just off the grid, living a regular life somewhere. But then, I managed to find an email for his agent. As a Hail Mary, I reached out, and when I least expected it, he replied, saying that Andrew was interested in talking to me. Here's what he sounded like as the voice of DW.
I don't believe it! You're next!
And here's what he sounds like now.
I'm Andrew Dayton, and I was the 6th person to play DW on Arthur. And I had the part of DW for seasons 18 and 19 from 2014 to 2015.
Did people ever ask you to do the voice?
Yes, all the time at camp too. I remember especially overnight camp. But the thing is that most people didn't understand is I didn't really have a DW voice. It was kind of just my voice that I, amped up or whatnot. But that's just the way I spoke. And
Me too.
Wow.
like adult, yeah, So it wasn't like I had like the secret voice. But I did my best. It was slightly awkward, but
To this point, he was by far the hardest former DW to track down because, as I said, there was almost no way of finding him. I had to know if that was somehow on purpose. He told me that there's barely anything out there linking him to DW because his time on Arthur was very short-lived. Not only that, but Arthur was the first.
so that I did, and the last. I really didn't continue with acting much after Arthur, and I'm content with that. That was kind of a decision that I made. I really did love the experience, but my voice started to change towards the end of it. And as a voice actor, it's hard to find work in that kind of in-between kid and adult phase. And I could do some more theater afterwards. I did a year at YPT, and I took drama in high school. But I think I just realized that it was a great experience when I did it, but I was very content to just do other things. I'm focused more on school now and going into science, so it was a complete 180, but I enjoyed both a lot. Yeah.
I'll be right back. Excuse me. Back, folks. Let's continue on.
In case you haven't realized, that's not how I feel. I mean, this is episode 9 of a podcast all about playing DW, so clearly, I'm not capable of moving on from the experience as easily as Andrew. I asked him if, despite feeling ready to move on from DW, about what it feels like to have played this character that was on TV for 25 years that only 7 other people have played.
It's super weird. I think about that a lot, actually. Like, I'm one of 8 people to voice this iconic character, and I love it. I mean, it's so cool to just look at, like, the Arthur wiki and see my name there, or see some clips that my friends send me, and like, is this you? Is this you doing that? And it's just an awesome experience. I look back on it and I'm just so proud of myself for putting myself out there and doing it. And I love Arthur. I always have, and I think it's such an amazing show. And to be a part of that, it's just awesome, and it always has been.
Wow.
And how is he so cool with moving on from all of this so confidently?
I mean, when I was doing voice acting, I always wanted to find a role that I was very proud in, and that I could hold my head up high about, and that I actually really enjoyed and loved, and that was DW for me.
Excuse me.
And maybe that's partly why I decided afterwards that I didn't need to keep going to auditions and searching for that, because I think I found that with DW, and there was never really any doubt that it was like the wrong choice or I could have done better. I was really content with my experience. I loved working with everyone that I did. So it didn't take any time for me really to like get around to the fact that I did that. It happened. I loved it, and I was able to move on from it.
Do you feel like maybe you peaked with DW and you're just good? You don't want to do anything else because that was the best experience that could have possibly been?
I do. I honestly do. As a DW, I just think it was such a perfect role for me. And she's so different from me, you know? She's unfiltered. She says what's on her mind. And when I was voicing her, that was not something that I did at all. And so I think it was a great experience.
Do you have any idea sort of what you're aiming for or what you want to be when you grow up?
Well, it's a good question. I'm also not certain about what I want to do. And I think that I am going into sciences. I decided that I'm heading to McGill next year to focus on that. And I'm thinking right now something to do with diseases and vaccines, immunology, microbiology, all that stuff.
Where'd that idea come from?
Well, actually, it was pre-pandemic.
Oh, okay. If he's so set on moving on from all of this acting stuff, why does he even have an agent?
Yeah, well, I mean, I technically do, but I haven't been to an audition in a year.
Right.
And,
Wow.
like, basically after Arthur, there was a few more auditions, and that was kind of it for me.
How he knows what he wants to study in school and has a goal in mind for what he wants to pursue in life. I just didn't feel that way. And I asked him if he feels like he's a normal person.
Well, I think most, when I think of a normal child, or like a normal boy, I guess, I picture someone who plays sports, someone who is not really into theater and doesn't really care much about school, you know? And that was very much not me. I do like sports, I did like theater, I do care about school. And that's okay. I mean, definitely growing up, I did feel a bit different, and it was hard not fitting into that box. but as I've grown older, I've learned to really embrace that and love that.
Mhm.
And I would encourage anyone who doesn't feel like they fit in that box to step outside and keep running with it. And yeah.
Was he always this self-assured?
Yeah, I mean, well, not always, but
Yeah.
I definitely more than I was when I was DW.
I asked him about what he remembers surrounding getting attention for having played DW. As I've mentioned, I was sometimes bullied for playing a girl on TV. Could he relate?
I remember some friends were asking me, like, aren't you worried about getting bullied for that in high school or whatnot? And that was always so surprising to me. Like, I had
Wow.
never considered that would be something people would look down upon or criticize. I've always thought that was the coolest thing in my eyes. And I was very fortunate to never have any kind of negative experience with that. So, yeah, in that respect, I'm really lucky.
So I figured, all right, he's moved on. What kinds of other things was he interested in pursuing?
I did a wide range of activities growing up. I was always kind of searching for my thing, and that included sports. Didn't last very long. Not a sporty person.
Yeah.
But I did do a lot of. I did some art classes. I did acting and theater, of course, and that was kind of my main passion at the time. Now, I don't. There's not really many extracurriculars that I'm so interested in right now.
I found Andrew's self-assuredness really encouraging. I hope I can get to a place where I'm as laid back yet focused when I'm choosing what I want to do in my life. But let's take a quick break. When we come back, there's another person I had a very similar conversation with, and I think you'll want to hear from them. Here's a quick word from our sponsors.
Okay.
Finding DW is independently produced by me, Jason Schwimmer. If you want to support the show, the best way you can do that is by checking out my Patreon. Supporters like you help me spend more time doing what I love, creating this podcast for you to enjoy. Plus, when you support this podcast, you'll gain access to exclusive bonus podcast episodes that feature full-length interviews with each person who appears on my show. Head to patreon.com/findingdw. That's FINDINGDW. No punctuation. There's also a link in the episode notes. Thank you very much. And now, back to the show.
Okay.
Welcome back. From the beginning of this podcast, one of the things I've been most excited for is to speak to the kid who is currently the voice of DW. Except, through doing this podcast, I learned that there probably isn't someone currently cast in the role because the future of the Arthur cartoon seems uncertain.
Yes.
But that means that the person who played DW most recently could be the last person to ever play the part.
Yes.
And that person is Ethan Pugiotto. I thought tracking Ethan down would be easiest of all. I stopped playing DW when I was around 14. According to my calculations, he's 14 now, so even before I knew anything about him, I figured there was probably a pretty good chance that he was still doing voiceover and acting work. I tracked down his agency and gave them a call. I'm trying to get in touch with one of your clients, Ethan Pugiotto. Sorry, we don't represent Ethan Pugiotto. I was really surprised.
Wow.
Then, I checked old reliable IMDb Pro, who should seriously consider sponsoring this podcast. And they listed...
Oh, and according to this episode seen here, he was 15. Continue on.
a different agency entirely. So, I reached out, and sure enough, I was connected with Mrs. Pugiotto, Ethan's mother. That wasn't unexpected. It's pretty common for kid actors' parents to be pretty involved in their kids' careers. I called Mrs. Pugiotto and explained what I was up to, and that is how I managed to speak with Ethan. Here's what he sounded like as the voice of DW.
I don't know. I brought you my old princess dresses from when I... Really? For me?
And here's what he sounds like now.
Hi, my name is Ethan Bujoto, and I was the 8th and potentially last person to play DW on Arthur. I got the part for season 22 of the show in 2019.
Even though Ethan is only 14, he'd already done a ton of work as an actor before landing the role of DW on Arthur. I've mentioned that I don't remember a time before I got the role of DW, before being a voice actor was part of my identity. Do you remember not being an actor?
No, I'd say, well, I started acting when I got my Big Fat Greek Wedding, I believe I was in grade 3.
Wow.
And I don't really remember anything before that. I mean, unless I'd have a picture of something that that I guess I'd remember.
So, that's one thing we have in common. Ethan's first role in the industry was in the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding 2.
All my friends' parents knew the movie. They'd tell the kids in my class, and they'd be like, "Do you know that your classmate Ethan is in a movie? He was in the movie theaters." And they'd be like, "Really? That's so cool." And then I remember the day that I finished shooting it. I think it was like a 3-day period, and my whole school had me stand up in front of the in the assembly, and they were like, "Here we have Ethan, and he was just in a movie, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and we'd like to know a little bit about you." And basically, I told them what happened. Yeah, it was pretty cool. I'd walk down the hallways, and people would be like, "Oh, I watched you last night on Charlie Brown," or stuff like that. And
it was a lame cartoon Charlie Brown series nowadays. Continue on.
When I first realized that people have know who I am now, instead of me just being a kid in school or something like that.
He's also known for his role in the 2019 movie Shazam. He currently plays the voice of Charlie Brown on a cartoon called The Snoopy Show. I asked him if his classmates
which I'm not a huge fan of, sorry.
know that he's DW on Arthur.
Well, at my new school, no one really knows.
So he recently switched schools, and
they don't really recognize me because I've changed a lot from the time that I was in Shazam and My Big Fat Greek Wedding. So obviously people have to take a little bit of time to connect that character in Shazam with me.
Those classmates don't all recognize him, even from his live action roles, because he's grown up a little since playing those parts. Also,
in Shazam, they put in not a wig, it was like hair extensions, because when we first did the shot of the elevator scene in I can't remember when it was, but when we did it, they said, "Oh, you're done." And when I came back, they said, "Oh, did you recently get a haircut?" And I said, "Yeah, I thought that I was allowed to get a haircut. I thought that we were finished." But because they called us back to do that other car crash scene, they had to put hair extensions in my hair. So
wow.
Yeah, and then no one really there's like, why does your hair look like weird in that scene? I've never seen you with that type of hairstyle. I said, "Oh, because they had to do this to my hair." And I remember it's not like when I would go into shoot one day, they'd take it out, and then the next day that I came back, they'd put it back in. I had to wear that for the whole time I was shooting. Like, I couldn't take it out. I'd be sleeping with it, and yeah.
So did you have to go to school with your hair extensions?
Yeah.
Was that embarrassing?
A little bit. They're like, "Oh, yeah, I can't believe you have hair extensions."
Even though he got teased a little for having to wear those hair extensions, Ethan seemed to take it in stride. I asked him if he ever got picked on for playing the voice of a girl, and told him about how Jake Beal, the 5th person who played DW, responds to bullies by saying, "Oh yeah? Well, I got paid for playing the voice of a girl."
Yeah. I have a funny story about that. So obviously, once in a blue moon, my friends joke with me. They're like, "Oh, I can't believe you played the role of a girl." I'm like, "Yeah, well, you don't have this amount of money in the bank, do you?"
When I started in the role of DW, I was hardly acting. That's just what my voice sounded like. I was curious if Ethan had to change his voice or not when he played DW too.
Well, usually when I do auditions, I always look up the character. Like, for example, Charlie Brown. I had to look up and watch.
Which is a lame cartoon series nowadays. Continue on.
Movies of him.
Yeah.
For DW, I looked up past episodes of Arthur and I watched those, but I remember the first audition I believe was a self-tape. And when they sent the email, the description was a little bit confusing, and me and my parents were confused on whether
Yeah.
you should do like my regular voice or if I should try to make it more of a DW type voice. So the self tape that I did my regular voice, and then our agent sent us an email saying, "Oh, could you try doing it with a more DW type voice?" And we were like, "Okay," because we thought that they were just trying to see his regular voice and maybe if it matched. So we did the self tape again, and then we sent it as DW, and then we got the call back.
The roles
Wow.
you've had, there's that, and then DW especially are, roles that you stepped into for characters that were established. I mean, is there any pressure, or do you approach roles like that differently?
For DW, because there were other actors that have done that role, I had to sort of change my voice and adjust to that character. So I'd say there is a difference in terms of, I guess, if there hasn't been a person that's done the role before you, you get more, I guess, space to do whatever you want. But for DW and PJ Masks, or not PJ Masks because that was a new character, but I'd say for DW, because there have been other people that have done it, I had to adjust my voice and adjust my character.
Unlike me, Ethan had already been acting before he got cast as DW. I asked him if he remembered his audition.
I think when I started, I was 11, 12, and my agent sent me an email and said, "Here's an audition for Arthur. You're auditioning for DW." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that there were boys auditioning for the role of DW." And when he called me and he said, "Yeah, it usually was a boy doing DW's voice for as long as he can remember, at least."
So you were surprised to hear that it had always been guys that played the role?
Yeah, I never knew that.
Wow.
Yeah. Did you feel any type of way about it? Did it feel funny stepping into something where you'd be playing a girl?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was a little bit mind-blowing.
Were you surprised to find out that you had gotten it?
I was. It was crazy because I never thought that I was going to get the role of a girl, but I mean, it's astonishing.
So do you see a distinction or a difference between voice acting auditions and live action?
Well, one thing I'll say about voice acting is it's way easier for like time and I guess it's way easier to do just in general. Acting, you have to memorize lines and you have to do it so many times. I wouldn't say it's frustrating, but it's definitely harder than voice acting. Voice acting, there's no face. You just go in front of a microphone and read lines. So
Yes.
and it's better, I guess, time wise because even if you're doing even if you're the main person in an episode, then you're still only gonna miss, let's say, 2 hours maximum of your day. But with acting, even for like a 15-second scene, you could miss 1, 2, maybe even 3 days of school, for me at least.
Did you notice that he just used the word miss? Do you feel like when you're going to act, you're missing stuff?
Definitely. When I was doing Shazam, I remember there were 2 scenes. So, firstly, it was going to be me and my brother at the dinner table, and then we started arguing and we got into an elevator fight.
Wow.
Because the producer wanted more backstory on the family in general, we shot a different scene, which was the car crash scene, which you most likely saw in the movie. That scene we had to do during school. So, but I remember one scene, I was up until 2 a.m. And the next day was my mother's birthday. I slept all the way until 7 p.m. that day.
Did it feel strange to be, so exhausted from the night before to have missed your mom's birthday, for example?
Yeah, I felt really bad for my mother.
It sounds like those long hours you hear about for live action movies and TV shows took a real toll on Ethan, and that he places an emphasis on balancing his acting career with his regular life as a kid in school.
I would always ask my agent to get the earliest call time for voice acting. so that once I'm done, I can go straight to school and hopefully I wouldn't have missed too much. Every single day when I would have a recording, I'd email my teachers, say, I have a recording today. Could you please send me what I'm missing? But for acting, it's a whole different story because
Yeah.
you're missing way more time, possibly even a day at most, or maybe a week. But acting is definitely more time consuming.
Yes.
Ethan has got a work ethic that I just didn't have at his age.
Well, I take school very seriously. I think school is one of the main ways to be educated. Obviously, there are many jobs which you do not need a high school degree, or sorry, a degree in this sector, I guess. But I do take school seriously. I obviously do not want to fall behind. I need to keep my marks up. But yeah, I do take school very seriously. And if you were doing voice acting instead of acting, then that would be easier on school. But especially in high school, like I've told my agent that because I'm in high school and there's more homework and more tests and everything and it's more serious to like I guess hang on with all the auditions and not like give me too many auditions, too many just auditions in general. But yeah.
Does the idea that having played a role as popular as DW and knowing that that will probably stay with you for a very long time scare you?
No, not really.
I asked him if playing DW makes him feel different from his friends or other classmates.
Well, I mean, I have done acting and I am on screen, but I'd still consider myself a normal child. I feel like I don't really know what to say. Besides me being an actor and people, I guess, knowing who I am, I'm still pretty normal. There's no really difference from me and my friends. I still see myself as the same person, regardless if I've been in a movie or not. Like nothing has really changed about me. I don't leave this group of friends because I want to be with the more popular kids or something like that. But nothing has really changed about my personality or who I hang around with. It's still, I guess, my choice. And yeah, nothing really changed about me.
And when I asked him, do you know what you want to be when you grow up?
I know that I don't want to be an actor.
It took me by surprise.
Wow.
When I asked him why, he told me that he'd been working on a live-action movie and was talking to some of his co-stars who were about 10 years older than he was at the time.
And they were just talking. So they're in LA, and they were talking about how they're struggling with rent and how it was like times were tough for them. And
that while he understood they were passionate and committed to acting, he knows he doesn't want to make that choice. At least not now. One thing's for sure. Ethan's got a good head on his shoulders.
Yes.
For now, he's an actor because he likes the work, not because he wants the fame.
I have this one motto. It's the only thing better than being rich and famous is being rich and not famous.
Are you sure that you're 14?
Well, I'm actually turning 15.
Oh, okay. Returning to Andrew, do you...
Yeah, he just turned, he's about to turn 16 in the next month or so. Let's just see what happens. Continue on.
Do you have any advice for me for how to move on from being one of the guys who played DW?
Yeah, I guess it's not the only thing about you at all, and it doesn't define you, you know. People sometimes, I would hope people don't view as just a kid who plays DW and see that I'm much more than that. And I would hope for you that you can see that everything that you do on a day-to-day basis is an achievement on its own. And it may not have the same reach as playing DW does, but what you do now and what you're doing is equally as valid and as interesting and as cool, even if less people are aware of it.
Do you feel like playing DW changed you at all?
Yeah, I do. it's given me a lot more confidence that I didn't have before. I was not a confident kid at all, and playing DW kind of was like a superpower that gave me confidence. Like, how many other people in the world can say that they did that?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're one of them.
Yeah.
So it's just it was a really unique experience that whenever I was doubting myself or questioning myself, I look back at that and I was saying I was, what, 10, 11 when I did that? That's pretty amazing. And now I'm forgetting your question.
No, just
did it change things?
Yeah.
Yes. And and it gave me a real sense of responsibility, coming and preparing my lines, being on time and professional. I think that really helped me grow up. And I apply those same skills to being a student, and I think maybe that helps with my success in school.
I want to completely agree with what he answered. I just don't know what it'll take to get there. I thanked Andrew for his time.
Yeah, like I've never had any contact with other CWs, so this is really cool for me. It's kind of been like my own personal anecdote, and now I get to share it with other people, which is great.
I made a point to ask each person who played DW for advice on how to move on from having played the role. But I found that Andrew's advice really stuck with me. The value of an achievement isn't based on how many people are aware of it. It's about what it means to you. That feels as close to an answer to the question as I've found. Here's the thing. I've never liked talking about being DW because of how uncomfortable it makes me for a very specific reason. I think deep down, I've been holding on to being DW because it's this big shiny thing that makes people think I'm special. And in my adult life, I've been searching for a way to supersede DW, but nothing's worked. I don't want it to be the only thing that defines me, but I think part of me is afraid of what it might mean if it does. Except the value of an achievement isn't based on how many people are aware of it. It's about what it means to me. I've done tons of things I consider achievements. Some of them are personal, some of them are professional, and while they aren't all things that get people as excited as playing DW, they're just as significant because of how satisfied they make me feel. Speaking with Andrew helped remind me to be proud of myself. Speaking to Ethan was incredible because it might be the closest I'll ever get to speaking with the current voice of DW, since he's the most recent one. It was amazing hearing about the experience he's had as an actor already. He takes his acting very seriously, making sure to stay on top of his responsibilities.
Yes.
He's operating at a level of productivity that I envy as an adult because it took me years to be as accountable and reliable as he seems to be. Plus, speaking with him reminded me of a version of myself I left behind. The mostly carefree kid who was just excited to go into a studio and be goofy into a microphone. My conversation with Ethan reminded me that this journey doesn't have to be so serious. Andrew isn't stressing out about what it means to have played DW.
No, he's not.
He's proud to have done it, and he's on to the next chapter of his life. I know it hasn't been that long since Ethan played the part, but I bet he's ready to push forward too. So, I'll try my best to take their lead. So thank you, Andrew and Ethan. Okay, and that's it for this episode. Not only that, I've officially spoken to each of the actors who played the voice of DW. Except, there's something crazy I haven't told you about yet. Here's a clip.
Hello, my name is Ryan Aaronworth, and I was the third and a half person to play DW on Arthur. I had the part in Season 7 in 2007.
Your name doesn't come up at all, and didn't, in any of my research or cyber stalking trying to connect with the other guys who played DW. And what's interesting is that you actually found me. That's right, a mysterious DW that I didn't know existed. And if you want to hear that story, you'll have to wait until next week. And until then, thanks for listening. This podcast was made possible in part from contributions through Patreon from listeners like you. Thank you, Blendy, Quinton Reviews, Sam Brodaddy, and Alex.
So that was Find DW, Episode 9, The Last Voice of DW. What do I think about this episode? I think it was amazing. So far, this episode was a success. And that was the LJPCBM episode number 930. Hope you enjoy it. Stay tuned for the next one. It's going to be LJPCBM episode number 931. Finding DW, episode number 10. He played DW for how long? Until next time, Sue Jefferson, Bobby, so baby, we give all the reacts guys pursue. Till then, just Jefferson out. See ya.
Given unto me this life I'll never take for granted, and given all the time I failed to really understand it, I never sought to meet the maker of reality, the one who gave the life that which is always happening, but I tried all the time. Why was I the one to see things as I do under the moonlight and the sun? Perception is the question, and the giver holds the key.